After the relatively surprising sale of Pascal Struijk, Leeds United are now on the hunt for a new left-sided centre-back. I say relatively surprising. Apparently the club would have had some idea that this was happening for quite some time, since Pascal Struijk didn't want to renew his contract and all this kind of stuff. But for fans, we had no idea this was coming, and it does leave the club in a bit of a funny situation because we all knew what the key positions to sign were. We were all thinking right wing slash number 10, fantastic, Harry Wilson, potentially a 9, probably a left back, maybe goalkeeper, and then we'll just see what we can do around the squad to improve things outside of that. But the movement of Pascal Struijk now means that centre back is a very, very important position because we probably need to sign two, another backup and another starting left centre back. And there are some key things that we need to look at when we're trying to work out who to sign. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about the players that Leeds United have been linked with signing, in addition to the sort of 5 factors that we will look for in centre backs just to make sure that we are getting the right person. Now, the players that we're linked with is coming directly from Graham Smith, who is obviously a very, very good source. Graham Smith being the head Leeds United writer at the YEP, which means that obviously he tends to be relatively spot on, has very, very good sources. And the first of the targets is one that is a relatively new one that's popped up fairly recently, and that is, if I can remember his name, yes I can, Lloyd Kelly, who is currently at Juventus, and let's be honest, he's not had the most inspiring of careers. Admittedly, a lot of people will say, well, if it was called Lloydinho Kelita, then you might be a little bit interested. I still don't think so. Again, left-sided centre-back, fairly good at what he does, but would be expected to cost about £25 million. Fairly expensive for a player that's sort of struggling to reach his potential at Juventus, but then again, it's modern football transfers. The other player that Leeds United are linked with a move for is Ladislav Krejci. Krejci playing for the Czech Republic at the World Cup. They got eliminated, but he did reasonably well. Would be expected to cost over £26 million because that's what Wolves paid for him, and they think he's sort of played fairly well last season, which he did, fair play to him. He was a relative shining light in that Wolves side in the same way that Strand Larsen, they sold him for a profit. It all kind of makes a little bit of sense. Both of these have a couple of things in common, being left-footed, being centre-backs, which is fine. Left-footed is one of the 5 things that I've got on my list. In fact, I'll start going through the list now, because if we don't get a centre-back that has all of these things, we could find ourselves in a little bit more trouble than we're anticipating, and we don't really want to do that. We could do with a nice, sensible season in the Premier League. And the first of them is being left-footed. We all know that Daniel Farke likes his centre-backs to play on the side where their favourite foot is, and that's for one simple reason: it opens up your fullback a little bit more. It means that passes have a tendency to be more, not only accurate, but it's more natural to play down the wing in that instance, which is absolutely fantastic. Otherwise, you're potentially not bringing Gabby Goodmanson into the game as much as possible, and he was one of our best players last season. If you sign someone who has a natural tendency to play inside, all you're doing is eliminating Gabby Goodmanson from the game, and if we do that, we really hamper ourselves. And at the end of the day, if we take Goodmanson out of the game, we're also potentially taking Okafor out of the game. So let's not do that. The first thing that we need, left-footed, or at the very least sort of bi-footed. But whatever, decent with their left foot, and in addition to that, I've gone good with the ball in general. One thing that I think Pascal Struijk was fairly underrated with was the fact that he could receive the ball and comfortably pass it a reasonable distance. And not only just the reasonable distance of passing, but he would have a decent eye for what the next best move was. And a lot of people complained. A lot of people complained that it was just side to side and he put it to a wing back and then the wing back could put it to them. It's not Pascal's sort of fault, the system that he was asked to play in, and that was relatively conservative, ball retention, that kind of stuff. We need someone that has an eye for taking the ball up the pitch in the same way that Joe Rodon does, because if we are to play in the same way on the left-hand side as we do the right-hand side, they're potentially going to need to play as functionally a left-back at points, and that is a very difficult role to take, but it's one that if we get the right centre-back can do that, like someone like a Lloyd Kelly who has played at left-back from time to time, is a fairly good candidate for that, and that's why I think we've potentially gone for him, because he can not only play as a centre-back, but fills in for Goodmanson when Goodmanson's gone for a little bit of a wander. That's something that I think we've been missing, and something that would be massively valuable. And on the subject of massively valuable, the third thing that I think we effectively need is someone with experience. Vladislav Krejci has a little bit of Premier League experience, not tons, but he's got a bit. Lloyd Kelly has a little bit of experience, but what I think we don't tend to realise because he's grown up at Leeds United is that Pascal Struijk is more experienced than we realised. He had almost 200, I think, appearances for Leeds United, which is massive in this day and age, especially when you consider the fact that he was still only 26, 27. He's still a fairly young guy that's coming into his prime years now. And I think having that level of experience in whatever centre-back we've got is going to be key, because we're going to be playing against tricky opponents. We're going to be playing Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, that lot. In addition to, we're hoping in the long run, European sides. So having that experience of the big games, because I think that's something that we missed in the FA Cup at Wembley, for example. I think if we had some players who had been in that situation a little bit more often, we would have been a lot more comfortable. And instead it was, we arrived at Wembley, we looked scared for the start of the match, and we only really came out in the second half. Someone who has experience of those big occasions is really going to make the difference for us. Like, Krejci is maybe an argument for that because he's played in a World Cup now. Lloyd Kelly played at Juventus, but there are some fairly tricky derbies over there. So hopefully that is something that transfers. And another thing that I hope transfers is the fourth thing on the list, which is someone that's dangerous at set pieces. Something that we were really lacking from Pascal last season was his set piece scoring. So that's something he's done basically his entire career. He's good for a few goals from set pieces. Like, picture the promotion season. Sunderland managed to get 2 goals from, well, one was a corner, the other was sort of a corner or a free kick. I don't know, but it was set pieces. And I think we lacked that last season without Pascal. And I say without Pascal, without him scoring goals directly, is what I mean. So if it's a case of going out and looking for someone, I'm not saying this is the most important thing, but having someone that is happy to just say, no, I'll go up for a corner, get their head on a ball, and 1 in 10 games will put it in the back of the net. That 1 in 10 games has the potential to make a very, 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 very big difference over the length of a Premier League season. The Premier League is tightening up in the midfield. We saw last season that we were a few points off of Europe. Like, if some of those earlier in the season matches had gone our way, like the Fulham, like the Bournemouth, we could have come out of that with a hell of a lot more points in potentially European football. I don't think it would have been healthy for us to have European football. I don't think the squad's ready for it, in the same way that I don't really think the Sunderland squad is ready for it. But we were a few decent set-piece goals away from that. And I think picking out the right left centre-back would be a substantial part of getting us that final way. And another thing that I think is something that is desperately needed to fill a gap that Pascal Struijk will leave is leadership. Now, you might look at the pitch and you might think, well, Pascal Struijk, you don't see him do many leadery things. You'd see Joe Rodon being shouty and showing passion, all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily what you want from a leader. Being loud and shouty and passionate, cool, but that means that you find it fairly tricky to give instruction to the other players on the pitch because you're so embroiled in your own emotions. Whereas Pascal Struijk clearly brought that sort of relatively calm leadership, that sort of guidance in a way that Ethan Ampadu also does, but we need to recognise that Ethan Ampadu isn't always going to be on the pitch because Ethan Ampadu loves a yellow card. So whilst losing Struijk's technical abilities is something that we need to pay attention to, we also need to pay attention to the loss of his role in the dressing room and sign someone who is similarly going to fill that kind of gap, that is going to sort of pick up the slack when things are going wrong and say, look, I know things are tough, but let's all rally behind the cause that is Leeds United and hopefully get a result. You can tell by the way that I said that I wouldn't be the ideal centre-back leader. Then again, you can tell from my build I wouldn't be the ideal centre-back leader. But that's ultimately, if we're able to combine those 5 things, the sort of experience and leadership, in addition to the technical side of, being left-footed but decent at set pieces and good with the ball, we're going to fill that Pascal Struijk stereotype very nicely, and if we get the right player, hopefully improve on it. Because as much as like a lot of people like to dig on Pascal Struijk for leaving and all this kind of stuff, he was a very good player for Leeds United. It's going to be a very hard gap to fill, and hopefully the 49ers are able to do it. I'm very optimistic about that, and Graham Smith believes that the one that's most likely is going to be Ladislav Krejci, which would be quite nice. But we'll see how it goes. Anyway, that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe as well. It's an easy button down there. Give it a bop. And I will see you all later. And yes, I'm recording this at 2:41 in the morning because I'm trying to get acclimatised for the England match again. Because I've had a few shifts that ended at normal times, and I went to bed at a normal time yesterday, and oh my god, that was bad timing considering the England match was so soon. Ah well. See you later.